MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down each and every Alabama position as we head toward a spring practice on March 13th. The best possible way to do that is to bring in Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. He is all over the roster, the personnel, and the happenings surrounding Alabama sports, not just football. He's got to track everything, but of course, football is front and center. Stephen, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Speaking of tracking everything, got to look at some basketball and some softball today as well.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know how you do it. I really don't. Defensive line for Alabama. I made this comment about the running back position. It could be argued that this is the most stocked position year in, year out in college football over the past decade or so under Nick Saban. Only one significant loss, Raekwon Davis moving on to NFL draft eligibility, should be a top 50 pick, something in that range at the next level. Who's coming back?
Well, number one, LeBron Ray is coming back on the defensive line, former five-star from Madison, Alabama. Had a foot injury in week 3 of last season against South Carolina, and that foot injury kept him out for the remainder of the year. But LeBron Ray, somebody of whom we know can affect the passing game, can stop the run, really, really good, violent hands, quick feet. So it's great to have LeBron Ray back. Along with him, you bring back a DJ Dale going into his sophomore year out of Clay Chalkville High School in Pinson, Alabama. DJ Dale had a good freshman year, suffered an injury to his knee down the stretch, but he's back at defensive tackle. You got Christian Barmore, and here's a guy, redshirt sophomore, out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 6'5", 310 pounds. Here's a guy that people are very excited about. Kind of reminds me of a younger Sean Robinson, plays the game very aggressively, very angrily, if that's the term, on the field. Christian Barmore does. Who would have those three guys in Ray, Barmore, and DJ Dale. But Fidarian Mathis is back. Stephon Wynn is back. You have the likes of Justin Aboigbe and Byron Young and Ishmael Sopser and Brandon Ingram. And then from the 2020 class, you bring in Jamarian Latham and Tim Smith, and also one Jamarian Latham, Tim Smith, and one big guy here, Jamil Burrows. There we go. Jamil Burrows by way of Georgia. So many strong defensive linemen in this class, and also on the team. But it all starts with the main three in this rotation of DJ Dale at defensive tackle, LeBron Ray at defensive end, and the other defensive end being Christian Barmore. So if you look at one, Freddie Roach, defensive line coach, if you look at one, Nick Saban, and even if you look at one, Sal Sunseri, who not only works with the outside linebackers, he does tend to mingle with the defensive line at times as well. Those three coaches in particular, Freddie Roach and Sal Sunseri, they got to be really happy right now with this group on the defensive line.
Yeah, LeBron Ray, of course, as you mentioned, is a sophomore back in 2018 on the field for 13 games, 6 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks. Was looking to have a big year last year. Before that was cut short as a junior, only played 3 games. Barmore in limited action, 6 tackles for loss. He got into the backfield, a couple sacks for him, and Dale had 3 tackles for loss. So is this position, as it's obviously very strong, is it Alabama strong?
I think it is. And it goes back to getting the right coaching in here to push the potential out of these young men. And you bring in a Freddie Roach, who was here twice before on Nick Saban's staff, 2008 to 2010. Roach served as an assistant strength coach under Scott Cochran. And then 2015 and 2016, he came back as a director of player development. And in both of those stints, he saw 2 national championships, one in 2009, of course, the other in 2015. If you look at Roach's work as a defensive line coach at Ole Miss from 2017 to 2019, we're talking about 84 sacks combined in those 3 years. Of the 84, 58.5 from the defensive line perspective. That's about 70% of those sacks coming from the D9. And Freddie Roach did this with guys like Josiah Coatney and Benito Jones, more so of your 2- and 3-star prospects. Now, Ole Miss will come up on a 4- and 5-star here and there, but the majority of this 2- and 3-stars. So Roach got the utmost out of those guys. And you're at Alabama, where 4- and 5-stars run wild. So he's going to get the most out of this group as well. And the crazy thing about Coach Roach is, from the state of Alabama, from Killen, Alabama, going towards that North Alabama area. And of course, he was a very decorative linebacker in his career with the Crimson Tide from 2001 to 05. That 05 season, he was part of that defense that was in the top 10 in the country in all 5 major defensive categories, playing alongside the likes of Juwan Simpson and D'Amico Ryans and Rudy Griffin, Ramsey Robinson, Roman Harper, Charlie Pepper, names that really ring a bell in terms of Alabama fans that were a part of this program long before Nick Saban made headway in here. So Freddie Roach, you get the right coach in here, you can have the guy that push the talent and the potential out of these young men, and that's what Coach Roach looks to do with this litany of talent that you got here on the defensive line.
Stephen, where can we find you on Twitter?
They can find me on Twitter at Coaching M. Smith on Twitter, at Coaching M. Smith, doing a lot of high school coaching to my guys here at Francis Marion High School. My boys are trying to win a state championship in basketball now,
Nice.
but I coach them in football. So that's at Coaching M. Smith on Twitter.
We, of course, have been following each other for years. I just didn't want to I wanted to get that straight for everybody out there. And also follow me on Twitter at MarkRogersTV. Thank you so much, Stephen.
No problem, Mark. Thank you.
And we'll knock out the linebackers. Here we go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, getting you set for spring camp in Tuscaloosa with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. You most likely can't be there yourself. That's why we bring in Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, because he will be there each and every day covering the Tide. We're breaking down Alabama football position by position. Stephen, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. Excited for the first day of spring ball. Freshly cut grass and football. Can't beat it.
There you go. We got the inside linebackers and the outside linebackers, and we lose nobody on the inside track. Outside, a couple of playmakers in Terrell Lewis, 11.5 tackles for loss and 6 sacks. Anthony Jennings, 83 tackles, one of the top tackle totals on the Tide in 2019, 12.5 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. So a lot of productivity on the outside that the Tide is losing. Who's coming back? Who's coming up through the ranks that could be a factor?
We're starting this off with those outside backers there, Mark. One guy to look at right now is Christopher Allen, by the way of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a former high 4-star in the 2017 class. And this is somebody in Chris Allen of whom the coaching staff really likes this young man, really likes him. At times, he's unsure of what he's supposed to do. He's gotten better with that. Sal Sunseri, an outside linebackers coach, has helped him with that. He's been hampered by some injuries also, but now officially healthy, fully healthy at 6'4", 250 pounds. He's got freakish athleticism, can create a lot of plays in the backfield, can sack the quarterback, can create those tackles for loss. So the main guy is Christopher Allen, but he's got some guys behind him at that outside linebacker spot that will challenge him. 2 of those guys just so happen to be King Wakuda and Kevin Harris II, both coming in that 2019 class. King Wakuda from Georgia, a 4-star. Sal Sunseri has spent so much time giving him individual coaching, and he's done that because he sees there is a lot of talent and pass rush ability in Wakuda. He's got quick hands, fast feet. He's got a dangerous mindset to get after the quarterback. And when he's able to really channel that in practice, he has been a monster on the field in practice. So Bama fans and the coaching staff really excited this season of what King Wakuda can do. Kevin Harris II has put on some more weight. He has gotten better. So he'll be challenging as well. Jerez Parks, a young man by the way of Florida. And here's the guy that was supposed to have came in to the 2017 class. We all know the story. Alabama could not get to him in time in that recruiting cycle. He cried on national TV, showing a lot of emotion because Alabama was his dream school. He always wanted to come here. He accepted the gray shirt and came in the spring of 2018. Jerez Parks right now at 6'4", 240 pounds. So he's in the mix as well. Then you have a Ben Davis, a guy that came in 2016, and everybody was enamored when Ben Davis came in from Gordo High School. His father, Wayne Davis, the all-time leader in tackles, 327. It's been a difficult push for being a rough transition at times. Will he finally be able to put everything together? Remains to be seen. He's got all the tools in the world, Mark. It's just mentally, he has got to buckle down. He's got to get focused. He's got to lock in. But Ben Davis definitely the tools to get it done. But in terms of the freshman coming in here, Will Anderson is the one that people are just saying all types of stuff about. And you watch the tape, you watch the film, you watch the All-America Bowl, you fall in love with just his first step, his initial burst in quickness, his demeanor, his determination, his motor to get after the quarterback. Of course, his physical stature at 6'4", 230 pounds reminds you of a Tim Williams or of a Christian Miller. So there's, of course, Will Anderson right there. And then behind him, a Drew Sanders at 6'5", 230 pounds by the way of Texas. And here's a young man that angry, violent, effective, efficient, big play capability. And then behind those two, you have a Chris Braswell from Baltimore, Maryland, and a Quandarius Robinson from Jackson-Olin High School in Birmingham, Alabama. So this outside linebacker class, Chris Allen has the experience, but he's got some freshmen and some young players behind him that will be gunning for that spot. That outside linebacker position, Mark, I can tell you right now, whoever wins that job, you earned it, but don't sleep, because if you sleep, here comes a youngster ready to take it from you. So true competition at that spot, as opposed to inside linebacker. The good news is you bring back Dylan Moses and Joshua McMillan. Both come back, and this is huge because you lost both guys in the preseason to injuries. They're both back. Dylan Moses, we know his capability. He can be a top 5, top 10 guy playing a full season healthy, knowledge on the field, experience on the field, leadership on the field. You have Joshua McMillan, somebody of whom is entering his 6th year. That knowledge of that playbook, 6 years of knowing it, 6 years of being around it, 6 years of being entrenched in it, and a guy that actually taught the system to Dylan Moses. And here's a guy in Joshua McMillan of whom will attack the ball, will get after the ball, is a bloodhound for the football. So having those two guys back, a big deal. Behind those two, Shane Lee and Christian Harris, they were both probably thrown into the fire before they were ready to a season ago, but big time experience, invaluable experience, and both guys back will grow from that experience. Behind those two, you've got Alakaho and Jalen Moody and Markel Benton, just talent at that inside linebacker position. But it starts with Dylan Moses and Joshua McMillan getting both of those two guys back. A big deal when you look at Pete Golding, year 2 of him calling the defense, year 2 of him coaching those inside linebackers. You got to feel like nobody is happier than Golding, seeing that I got McMillan and Moses both back. I have a chance to have a much better season coaching this defense than what I had in year 1.
We go back to 2018. McMillan racked up 31 total tackles. Dylan Moses led the team with 86 and 10 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks. And Stephen, This was debated throughout the season in regards to Alabama losing the 2 games that it did, but in very close fashion, obviously one to the national champions and one to their hated rival down at the wire. So the Alabama detractors were saying, stop making excuses. But on the Alabama side, look at the key injuries at linebacker. And that was the one position that was talked about down the stretch as being a factor, much like in 2017 when the College Football Playoff Committee made the selection for Alabama, thinking, hey, they're getting guys back. That obviously wasn't the case in 2019. Can you speak to what you saw out of the defense where these guys were sorely missed?
Oh, absolutely. And first and foremost is when you have especially the 2 linebackers in Dylan Moses and Joshua McMillan, you're playing 2 18-year-old freshmen and Shane Lee and Christian Harris in the middle of that defense. So guys like confirmation, affirmation. They want to make sure, am I in Rango? Am I in Rover? Am I in this blitz? Am I in that blitz? Am I in that call and this call? And they look to the guy right next to them just to make sure, hey, man, am I in the right call? But the guy they're talking to is just as young as they are. So they can't get that affirmation. They can't get that confirmation. And then when you have Xavier McKinney from the secondary kind of having to come down, line everybody up, communicating everything across the board, and then X has to jump back to his free safety spot to make the play, that's a lot of pressure on the last line of your defense, that being in the secondary. So not having a Dylan Moses or a Joshua McMillan that know this system and they can call it from the middle of that defense and make sure everybody is in pocket, that's a big deal. And you are not just playing those 2 freshmen. Alabama was playing 8 to 9 true freshmen this past year. The Crimson Tide, they're known for playing freshmen, but they're known for playing freshmen because you just can't keep that guy off the field, and you got to play them in those spot roles. Alabama had to play freshmen out of necessity because the freshmen were all they had. The babies were all they had. And Alabama has never been put in that spot before. And I mean, it's set in stone when you look at, okay, you lose Dylan Moses, you lose Joshua McMillan. Alabama could have easily gone to an Alakaho who had experience, could have easily gone to a Jalen Moody, could have easily gone to maybe a Markel Benton, but they went to the 2 freshmen. That tells you right there, they had absolutely probably no confidence in nobody else other than the 2 true freshmen. So when you're playing 2 young guys in the middle of a defense, they are responsible to making all the calls, and they're trying to get affirmation from the guy right next to them to make sure, am I in the right call? And the guy right next to you is just as young as you are. You talk about welcome to the world. So it was tough. It was a difficult task for those 2. And for Pete Golding, not only do you have to call the defense, but you have to settle in 2 freshman linebackers and trying to simplify the game. And what that does, it takes away from the aggressive play calling. It takes away from you doing what you want to do on defense because you're trying to make sure you are not confusing your 2 linebackers. So you have to call the most base of defenses.
And it's a great point that you make. You want to have that veteran anchor at any one position who can hold it down, especially a position of communication like at linebacker. And then, as you explained, the impact that it had even outside the positional unit to Xavier McKinney and how much freer he can play this year, knowing that he can just stick to his responsibility and not have to drop down and sort things out at the linebacker spot as well. It's a great point. Absolutely. You can catch Stephen at Coaching M. Smith on Twitter and, of course, at touchdownalabama.com. Please follow me on Twitter as well at MarkRogersTV and subscribe right here for the best in college football coverage. Stephen, we appreciate the breakdowns each and every time. You have a great day.
Thank you. You do the same, Mark.